In the bustling city of Phoenix, Arizona, lived a 36-year-old sales manager named Sarah Collins. She worked at a company called Creative Marketing Solutions. Sarah was known at work for her strong determination and commitment to success. Despite her busy job, she always maintained a warm and friendly personality, making her well-liked among her colleagues and friends. Sarah had a passion for outdoor activities, particularly hiking and camping. She frequently visited the Grand Canyon and Sedona. She was also an active member of a local book club, where she enjoyed discussing her favorite books by the author Rebecca Greene. Sarah's friends described her as compassionate and always willing to lend a helping hand. She had a radiant smile that could brighten any room. In July 2012, Sarah was planning a special camping trip with her family. She and her husband, along with their 2 children, Maple, age 12, and Hazel, age 9, were eagerly anticipating their upcoming adventure. Sarah had already packed their tent, sleeping bags, and food supplies. She had even purchased new hiking boots from a local store for the trip. Sarah's children were excited about roasting marshmallows and sharing stories around the campfire. At work, Sarah was expecting a significant promotion. Her boss had hinted that she might be the next head of the sales department. This promotion was a dream come true for Sarah, who had worked tirelessly for many years. She was thrilled about the future and the new challenges and opportunities it would bring. Sarah was also very close to her family. Her parents lived in nearby Mesa and often visited to spend time with their grandchildren. Sarah's brother lived in San Diego, but they kept in touch regularly through phone calls and emails. Sarah valued these relationships and made an effort to stay connected with her loved ones. In the days leading up to her death, Sarah was full of energy and excitement. She was looking forward to the camping trip and the possibility of a promotion at work. Her friends and family remember her as a loving and caring person who always put others first. Sarah's sudden death was a devastating and heartbreaking loss for everyone who knew her. On the morning of July 15, 2012, Thomas Collins woke up early to prepare for work. It was around 6:30 a.m., and the sun was shining brightly in Phoenix, Arizona. Thomas noticed that his wife Sarah was not in bed. Thinking she might be in the kitchen, he went downstairs. To his shock, he found Sarah's lifeless body in the living room. Sarah had been beaten to death with a heavy object. Her face was bruised, and there were signs of a struggle. Thomas immediately called 911, his voice trembling as he tried to explain what he had found. He was in disbelief, unable to grasp that his beloved wife was gone. The 911 operator calmly gathered the details and dispatched police and emergency services to the house. Thomas sat beside Sarah's body, tears streaming down his face, waiting for help to arrive. He was overwhelmed with grief, confusion, and disbelief. Emergency responders arrived within minutes. Paramedics confirmed that Sarah was dead, and police officers quickly secured the area. Thomas was visibly shaken and struggled to answer questions. He kept repeating how much he loved Sarah and how he couldn't understand who would want to harm her. The detectives noted his distress, but also kept in mind that, in such cases, the spouse is often a person of interest. Outside, neighbors began to gather, curious about the police presence. News of the incident spread quickly through the community, with local TV stations reporting on the tragedy and describing Sarah as a well-liked member of the community. By late morning, the house was bustling with activity. Forensic experts arrived to gather more evidence. They dusted for fingerprints, took samples from the crime scene, and carefully bagged the object used as the murder weapon. Every detail was meticulously documented. As the day progressed, the reality of Sarah's death began to sink in for her friends and family. Calls and messages flooded in, expressing shock and sorrow. The news of her death left everyone who knew her in a state of disbelief, struggling to come to terms with the tragic loss of a beloved wife, mother, and friend. The Phoenix police responded quickly to the 911 call on July 15, 2012. Within minutes, officers and emergency responders were at the scene. Detectives took charge of the investigation. The crime scene was a horrifying sight. Sarah Collins lay on the living room floor, clearly beaten to death with a heavy object found nearby. Blood was splattered on the carpet, and furniture was knocked over, indicating a violent struggle. The scene was otherwise clean, suggesting the attacker might have attempted to cover their tracks. The detectives began by securing the area to prevent any tampering with the evidence. They carefully documented everything, taking photographs and making detailed notes. Forensic experts arrived soon after to collect physical evidence. They dusted for fingerprints on the murder weapon, furniture, and door handles. They also took samples of blood and other potential deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, evidence from the scene. The detectives spoke with Thomas, who was visibly distraught and in tears. They asked him about the events leading up to the discovery of Sarah's body. Thomas explained that he had woken up early to get ready for work and found Sarah in the living room. He had no idea who could have done this to her. While one detective interviewed Thomas, another examined the rest of the house. He looked for any signs of forced entry, but found none, suggesting that Sarah might have known her attacker and let them in. The detective noted the absence of defensive wounds on Sarah's hands, indicating she was caught off guard. Neighbors began to gather outside, watching the police activity. Some were interviewed by the detectives, but no one reported seeing anything unusual that morning. The community was shocked and frightened, as Sarah was well liked, and her death was a terrible loss to everyone who knew her. By noon, the detectives had gathered all the evidence they could find. They bagged the murder weapon and other items for further analysis at the crime lab. The coroner arrived to take Sarah's body for an autopsy, which would provide more details about the time and cause of death. The detectives spent the rest of the day reviewing the evidence and planning their next steps. They knew they had a challenging case ahead, but were determined to find justice for Sarah and her family. Thomas Collins, the husband of Sarah Collins, became the first suspect in the investigation. Thomas was 38 years old and worked as a software engineer. He was known to be intelligent, but also somewhat introverted, often spending more time with his computer than with people. Thomas was a devoted husband, but in recent months he had become distant and stressed, which friends had noticed. The police brought Thomas in for questioning at the Phoenix Police Department on July 16, 2012. Detectives led the interrogation. Thomas appeared exhausted and heartbroken, his eyes red from crying, and he seemed genuinely distraught over Sarah's death. The detectives started by asking Thomas about his relationship with Sarah. Thomas explained that they had been married for 13 years and had 2 children, Maple, age 12, and Hazel, age 9. He admitted that their marriage had been strained lately due to their decision to participate in a partner-swapping arrangement. Thomas had pressured Sarah to engage in this arrangement with another couple. This obsession had caused tension between him and Sarah. When asked about the night of Sarah's death, Thomas stated that he had been working late on a government contract for his job at a well-known tech company. He said he went to bed around midnight and didn't wake up until the next morning when he found Sarah's body. His alibi was weak since he had been home alone during the time of the murder. The detectives asked Thomas about his relationship with Olivia, the woman from the other couple. Thomas admitted that he found Olivia attractive and that they had been intimate, but he insisted that it had nothing to do with the murder. He was visibly uncomfortable and kept fidgeting during this part of the questioning. The detectives noted Thomas's stress and anxiety, but also his apparent grief. They asked him about any recent arguments with Sarah. Thomas mentioned that they had argued about the partner-swapping arrangement and his interest in sexual experimentation a few days before her death. Sarah had been upset and told him she didn't want to participate anymore, which had frustrated Thomas. Despite his emotional state, Thomas cooperated fully with the police. He provided access to his phone and computer for further investigation. The detectives were cautious, but still considered him a suspect. They needed more evidence to either confirm his involvement or clear him of suspicion. As the questioning concluded, Thomas was allowed to go home but was instructed not to leave town. The detectives continued to gather information, knowing they had to explore all possible angles in the case to find the truth about who killed Sarah Collins. The second suspect in the investigation was Olivia Parker, a 34-year-old yoga instructor. Olivia was outgoing and charismatic, known for her sociable nature. She taught yoga at a popular studio in downtown Phoenix. Many people in the community admired her free-spirited attitude and her ability to connect with others. Olivia was part of the partner-swapping arrangement with Sarah and Thomas Collins, along with her own husband, Daniel. She had developed an unhealthy obsession with Thomas and had been trying to convince him to leave Sarah for her. Detectives brought Olivia in for questioning on July 17, 2012. Olivia arrived wearing casual yoga attire, looking calm and composed. The detectives began by asking Olivia about her relationship with Thomas. Olivia openly admitted that she enjoyed experimenting with Thomas and had strong feelings for him. She said she believed Thomas felt the same way, but was torn because of his marriage to Sarah. When questioned about the night of Sarah's death, Olivia claimed she was at home with her husband, Daniel. She said they had watched a movie and gone to bed early. However, the detective pointed out that there were no witnesses to confirm her alibi, making it weak. Olivia then talked about the partner-swapping arrangement. She explained that it was Thomas's idea and that Sarah had reluctantly agreed. Olivia saw it as a great opportunity to be intimate with Thomas. She admitted that she had been trying to convince Thomas to leave Sarah but denied any involvement in Sarah's death. The detectives noticed that while Olivia was cooperative, she seemed to be hiding something. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the seriousness of the situation. They pressed her about her obsession with Thomas and whether it could have driven her to harm Sarah. Olivia maintained her innocence, insisting she would never hurt anyone. During the interrogation, Olivia's phone records were examined. They revealed multiple calls and messages to Thomas, including some sent on the night of the murder. This evidence raised further suspicion as it showed Olivia's intense interest in Thomas. Despite her cooperation, Olivia's obsession with Thomas and her weak alibi made her a strong suspect. The detectives knew they needed more concrete evidence to either implicate or exonerate her. They continued to investigate her background, looking for any clues that could link her to Sarah's murder. As the questioning ended, Olivia was allowed to leave, but was instructed not to leave town. The detectives remained determined to uncover the truth, knowing that Olivia's possible involvement in the crime needed to be thoroughly explored. On July 19, 2012, 4 days after Sarah Collins's tragic death, new evidence emerged that gave the investigation a crucial breakthrough. That morning, it was cloudy and cool in Phoenix. Detective Patricia Johnson received a call from a neighbor who lived 2 houses down from the Collins home. The neighbor mentioned she had found something unusual while walking her dog in a nearby park. She had noticed a discarded bag under a bush near a picnic area. Inside the bag, she found a pair of bloody gloves and a smartphone. She immediately called the police, and the detectives arrived at the scene within 30 minutes. They carefully collected the bag and its contents, placing them in evidence bags to avoid contamination. Back at the Phoenix Police Department, the detectives examined the new evidence. The bloody gloves were sent to the crime lab for deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, analysis. The smartphone, which was locked, was taken to the tech department to be unlocked and analyzed. Detective Hernandez noted the phone was a newer model, an iPhone 4, which had just been released a few weeks earlier. While waiting for the results, the detectives reviewed their notes on the case. The bloody gloves suggested the killer had tried to dispose of evidence far from the crime scene. The smartphone could potentially belong to the killer or someone connected to the crime. Later that afternoon, the crime lab called with the DNA results. The blood on the gloves matched Sarah Collins, but there was also another DNA profile on the inside of the gloves. The profile did not match Thomas Collins, which was a significant finding. The tech department also managed to unlock the smartphone. It was registered to Olivia, the yoga instructor and second suspect. The detectives found numerous messages and call logs between Olivia and Thomas, including some from the night of the murder. Additionally, there were messages that showed Olivia's increasing frustration and jealousy toward Sarah. Detectives Johnson and Hernandez were surprised by this new evidence. The messages revealed that Olivia had been trying to manipulate Thomas into leaving Sarah, but her efforts had been unsuccessful. They now had a stronger case against Olivia, as the gloves and the smartphone linked her more directly to the crime. The detectives planned their next steps carefully, knowing they needed to bring Olivia back in for questioning with this new evidence. The case was starting to come together, but they still needed to ensure all details were thoroughly investigated. As the day ended, the detectives felt a renewed sense of purpose. The new evidence had provided a crucial lead, and they were determined to follow it to uncover the full truth behind Sarah Collins's murder. The third suspect in the investigation was Daniel Parker, a 36-year-old personal trainer. Daniel was known for his confidence and charm. He worked at a popular gym in Phoenix, where he trained clients and participated in competitive sports. Daniel was supportive of his wife Olivia's free-spirited nature and had participated in the partner-swapping arrangement with Sarah and Thomas Collins. However, Daniel had become increasingly jealous and suspicious. Detectives Patricia Johnson and Mark Hernandez brought Daniel in for questioning on July 20th, 2012. Daniel arrived at the Phoenix Police Department wearing a gym t-shirt and jeans. He appeared nervous but tried to remain composed. Detective Johnson began by asking Daniel about his relationship with Olivia. Daniel explained that they had been married for 10 years and had a mostly happy marriage. However, he admitted that the partner-swapping arrangement had caused tension. Daniel confessed that he had become uncomfortable with the arrangement as he was developing feelings for Thomas Collins and felt left out. When asked about the night of Sarah's murder, Daniel claimed he was at home with Olivia. He said they had watched a movie, Iron Man 2 *, which had been released a few weeks earlier, and went to bed early. Daniel's alibi was the same as Olivia's, but the detectives were skeptical due to the new evidence linking Olivia to the crime. Detective Hernandez questioned Daniel about his feelings toward Sarah. Daniel stated that he liked Sarah and had no reason to harm her. He seemed genuinely sad about Sarah's death and insisted he had nothing to do with it. However, his jealousy and discomfort with the partner-swapping arrangement were noted by the detectives. The detectives then presented Daniel with the new evidence, the bloody gloves and the smartphone found in the park. Daniel was visibly shocked and denied any knowledge of the items. He insisted that he had no reason to hurt Sarah and was being truthful about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. Despite his cooperation, Daniel's weak alibi and growing jealousy made him a suspect. The detectives decided to keep a close eye on him while they continued to investigate Olivia. They believed that Daniel might have more information about the crime and Olivia's involvement. As the questioning ended, Daniel was allowed to leave, but was instructed not to leave town. Detectives Johnson and Hernandez were determined to uncover the full truth, knowing that the evidence was leading them closer to solving the case. On July 21, 2012, the Phoenix police made a breakthrough in the Sarah Collins case. After carefully examining all the evidence, they identified Olivia Parker as the murderer. Olivia, a 34-year-old yoga instructor, had developed an unhealthy obsession with Thomas Collins, Sarah's husband. Olivia believed that if Sarah were out of the picture, Thomas would be with her. The detectives pieced together how Olivia went about killing Sarah. On the night of July 14, 2012, Olivia had gone to the Collins home. She knew Thomas would be working late and that Sarah would be alone. Using a heavy object, she brutally beat Sarah, ensuring there was no noise to alert the neighbors. Olivia then staged the scene to look like a struggle, hoping it would mislead the police. Olivia's motive was her deep obsession with Thomas and her desire to replace Sarah in his life. She thought eliminating Sarah would make Thomas choose her. Additionally, she wanted to frame her own husband, Daniel, for the murder, ensuring both her romantic rival and unsatisfactory husband were out of the picture. On July 21st, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, detectives Patricia Johnson and Mark Hernandez went to Olivia's home to arrest her. The sky was overcast, reflecting the somber mood. Olivia was taken by surprise. She had been teaching a yoga class when the detectives arrived. When they informed her of the arrest, Olivia initially tried to maintain her composure, but soon broke down, crying and pleading her innocence. The police handcuffed Olivia and escorted her out of the studio. The news spread quickly, and local media covered the arrest. The community was shocked as they watched Olivia, a once-admired yoga instructor, being taken away by the police. Sarah's family reacted with a mix of relief and sorrow upon hearing of Olivia's arrest. Thomas Collins was devastated by the betrayal, realizing that someone he knew and trusted was responsible for his wife's death. He struggled to come to terms with the loss and the horrific manner in which it happened. Sarah's children, Maple and Hazel, were too young to fully understand, but sensed the gravity of the situation. As Olivia was taken to the Phoenix Police Department, the detectives felt a sense of accomplishment. They had successfully identified and apprehended the person responsible for Sarah's brutal murder. However, they knew the case was far from over as they prepared for the upcoming trial. The trial of Olivia Parker began on October 1, 2012, in the Maricopa County Courthouse. The prosecution, led by a district attorney known for her sharp legal mind and strong courtroom presence, presented a compelling case against Olivia. The prosecution argued that Olivia's obsession with Thomas Collins and her desire to eliminate Sarah as a rival drove her to commit the murder. She detailed the evidence, including the bloody gloves and the smartphone found in the park, which connected Olivia to the crime scene. On the defense side, the attorney, known for taking on challenging cases, argued that Olivia was innocent and framed by someone else. The defense claimed that there was no direct evidence linking Olivia to the murder and that the police had not thoroughly investigated other potential suspects, including Daniel. The defense also suggested that the DNA evidence on the gloves could have been planted. During the trial, Sarah Collins's family sat in the courtroom, watching with heavy hearts. Thomas Collins, Sarah's husband, appeared distraught, often holding back tears. Their children, Maple and Hazel, were not present as they were too young to witness the trial's emotional intensity. Friends and community members who knew Sarah described her as a loving mother and a dedicated professional, making the crime even more heartbreaking. The jury deliberated for 3 days. On October 11, 2012, they returned with a verdict. Olivia Parker was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was filled with a mix of relief and sorrow as the judge announced the verdict. Olivia showed little emotion, maintaining a stoic expression. Her plan to eliminate Sarah and frame Daniel had failed, and she now faced the consequences of her actions. During the sentencing phase, Sarah's family members gave emotional statements. Thomas spoke about the devastating impact of losing Sarah and how it had affected their children. The judge sentenced Olivia Parker to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence was seen as just by Sarah's family, but it could never fully heal the pain of their loss. The verdict and sentencing had a profound effect on everyone involved. Sarah's family felt a sense of closure, knowing that justice had been served. The community, shocked by the crime, began to heal, though the memory of Sarah's tragic death lingered. Olivia's conviction sent a message that such a calculated and violent act would not go unpunished. As the trial concluded, those who knew Sarah hoped to remember her for the vibrant and loving person she was rather than the brutal way she was taken from them. After the trial, life slowly began to move on for everyone involved in the case. Thomas Collins, now a single father, focused on caring for his children, Maple and Hazel. He decided to move out of their Phoenix home, seeking a fresh start. They relocated to a smaller town nearby, where they could begin healing away from the painful memories. Thomas took a leave of absence from his job to spend more time with his children. He enrolled them in a new school and joined a support group for grieving spouses, finding solace in talking to others who had experienced similar losses. He also sought therapy for both himself and his children to help them cope with the trauma of losing Sarah. Olivia, now serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole, was transferred to the Central Arizona Women's Facility. In prison, she became isolated, with few visitors and little contact with the outside world. Her obsession with Thomas and her misguided actions had led her to a life behind bars, far from the free-spirited yoga instructor she once was. Daniel Parker, Olivia's husband, struggled to rebuild his life. He left Phoenix and moved to Los Angeles, where he found a new job as a personal trainer at a different gym. He sought counseling to deal with his feelings of betrayal and confusion. Daniel tried to move forward, but remained deeply affected by the events and the realization that his wife was capable of such violence. In the years following the trial, those touched by Sarah's life and tragic death worked to find peace and healing. While the pain of her loss remained, they found ways to move forward, carrying Sarah's memory with them and striving to live their lives with the same warmth and determination she had shown. Thank you for joining us on this episode of True Crime Documentary Studio. The tragic story of Sarah Collins reminds us of the dark consequences of obsession and betrayal. Stay tuned for more true crime stories and remember to always stay vigilant.